This is Gregory Majewski of Oakdale, Connecticut. You're listening to International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Hi, everyone. It is Sunday morning, June the 2nd, 2024, and you're listening to the International Radio Report on CKUT Radio 90.3 in the city of Montreal. My name's Sheldon. I'm here with Jill. We are here every Sunday morning with 30 minutes of news and information from the world of radio. We thank you for tuning in. We invite you to share any stories of interest that you may have, any questions you may have. We'll tell you how to get in touch with us at the end of the program. So we'll get right to today's news, and we have a little bit of everything, some stuff from here in Quebec, Canadian news, some U.S. news, and some international news on today's show.
So we start with something that might be a problem for a lot of people in southern Quebec. The CRTC has approved new country music station in Joliette on 107.9 FM. So this is via Steve Faguy from the Fagstein blog. Arsenal Media is still growing. On Monday, the CRTC approved its application for a new French language country music station in Joliette, which will act as a sister station to its O103.5 there. The new station will be branded Hit Country using a format Arsenal has used in stations in Lac-Mégantic, Beauce, in Saguenay, and Plessisville. The transmitter will be at 107.9 MHz, 25 kilowatts of power, and according to one document in its application, Arsenal is looking at using the call sign CJOL-FM for the station. The frequency chosen, effectively the only one remaining suitable for the station, might be frustrating for some listeners of Vermont Public's radio station, WVPS, broadcasting from the top of Mount Mansfield and getting a decent signal into the Montreal area. For listeners in and around Joliette, the new country station will effectively replace Vermont Public on that frequency. For those further south, including Montreal, it might depend on which direction you or your antenna is facing, and you could find yourself listening to both. Because WVPS is an American station, it does not have any protection north of the border. A Canadian station can stomp all over its signal, provided it does not interfere with its reception in the U.S. Also on Monday, the CRTC approved an application by Radio Nord Jolie, owner of French language community station CFNJ-FM in nearby Saint-Gabriel-de-Brandon. They proposed to replace the Saint-Gabriel station with one in Joliette on the same 99.1 FM frequency, while keeping the retransmitter in Saint-Zénon. This follows a denial of an application to extend the Saint-Gabriel transmitter's coverage area to include Joliette, which the Commission found to be a backdoor to setting up a Joliette station. So this one is an interesting one, because 107.9 is a very important frequency for a lot of people in southern Quebec and in Montreal, but also for WVPS. It has a lot to lose by losing its Quebec and Montreal audience. A lot of people, I am part of one of those, that listen to 107.9 because of its programming, because it has the BBC World Service on it. We enjoy listening to that station. It gives us a point of view that is different. That is also how we kind of learn a little more about our American friends. And it's very popular among English language speakers, probably in southern Quebec.
Yeah, they say in the article that the Vermont station puts in a, quote, decent signal into the Montreal area. It's far from just decent. It is a powerhouse signal into Montreal. I don't care, what kind of radio you're using. You're probably going to be able to hear, go to the end of the FM dial. You're going to hear a very clean signal coming from 107.9 in Vermont. Now, it's true that the regulation that they quote here is that the Joliette station will be able to cause difficulty to listeners in Montreal and south of Montreal or anywhere that was able to pick up 107.9 from Vermont. The only restriction they have is if they were to cause interference to any Vermont listeners, for example, from and prevent them from getting a clean signal on their Vermont public radio station, then there would be a problem. So what they're going to have to do is prove that their signal will not reach across the border and won't cause interference to 107.9. Most FM stations are not necessarily directional. So I don't know. I think this is going to be, we don't know when the station is going to be starting. They're obviously going to have to go through a testing period. I would say somebody between Montreal and Joliette who wants to hear Vermont is probably going to have some difficulty. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the signals are going to be mixing.
WVPS gets a huge chunk of its funding drive money from Quebec. And I'm pretty sure that this announcement they are aware of. And I'm sure they are like going a little crazy and saying, hey, what is going to be the impact on our own signal and our future?
You want a station that's licensed to Joliette. So who do you want to reach with that signal? You would think, okay, we want to reach Joliette and the immediate surroundings. Do you need 25 kilowatts to do that?
I would think the reason they're wanting more power is this is an area, it's like the Laurentians. It's very mountainous. There's a lot of little mountains here and there. Mm-hmm. And your signal is easily blocked. And maybe they're thinking, well, if we want to reach Lanaudière, which is the bigger region around Joliette, we got to push some power out there so that they can hear us.
You know, there isn't a French language country music station in Montreal, though. So if Joliette's not that far from Montreal, if that signal gets into Montreal, they're going to be much more concerned about getting a Montreal audience of country music fans than they are about country music fans in Joliette. You know, there have been other stations in rural Quebec who've wanted to reach into Montreal, and some of them got their wrists slapped by the CRTC saying, hey, you're a regional station for your little area there, and you're not a Montreal radio station. That has been a problem with a few stations in the past. I think here really the power is going to make the difference here, the 25 kilowatts. And once we know the elevation of that antenna, then we'll know a little bit more about just what are they planning to do with this station. They've got a monster signal to deal with coming up from the States, though. So we're going to be in the battleground area here in Montreal, I think.
You're going to be WVPS country.
yeah, a little bit country, a little bit public radio.
Yep.
We move west and we go to a very famous radio station. You talked about border stations, and this was one that was as much a Detroit radio station as it was a Windsor, Ontario station, CKLW on 800. During the big rock and roll British invasion and Motown and all of that, CKLW was one of the most listened to stations in Detroit as well as Windsor. Big powerhouse station on a nice clear frequency there. Anyways, one of their announcers, Lisa Williams, has announced her retirement from AM800 CKLW. This comes from CTV News in Windsor. After 38 years with the station, Lisa Williams has announced her retirement from AM800 CKLW. A longtime trusted voice of AM800, Windsor's The Morning Drive with Mike and Lisa, Williams announced her retirement on the program Friday morning. It's been an honor and a privilege to have connected with our morning listeners for almost 4 decades. My role on the Morning Drive has always been a labor of love, but I've decided to make the change because there are many more things I want to do, said Williams. I'm grateful to having the opportunity to work alongside so many remarkable and talented people who have left a mark on my heart. After a distinguished career, Williams said she's looking forward to more time with family, traveling, and continuing her involvement in local causes and community events. I'm 57, and I'm at the time of my life when you hear of really sad stories of people passing away or really not having the time to do what they wanted to do, Williams explained. I've talked to a lot of people who have retired and say that they wish they would have done it earlier. So I'm taking my time. My husband has been extremely supportive of this. Williams continued that she's appreciative of her husband's support. If you don't have a partner who's willing to take that on and you approach retirement as a team, then it can't happen. So I'm grateful for that. Williams noted it's been a career she'd never expected and one that began almost right out of high school. I was a traffic reporter on the morning show, and then I just developed into a co-host on the morning show with Cam Gardner. And, our relationship just took off and we had that chemistry. And that's what really makes a good morning show. Then when Cam stepped away, it was a miracle that Mike was there to fill in as well as he did. So, who knows if I would have stuck around for as long as I have if I didn't have two great co-hosts in my career. Williams added, I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish. I'm proud of how I feel I've been able to serve the people of Windsor, Essex, and the community. I really strive to be a professional, and I hope I've accomplished that in my career. At least I hope I've been looked at that way, and I really feel connected to Windsor, Essex. It's my home, and it's the listeners have been a family to me. Co-host Mike K. Cook told CTV News he's excited for Williams while admitting he's not sure who can replace her. She's done such an amazing job over so long and gone through so many changes in the media industry and the changes here in the city and stuff. And I think it's going to be such a big change for the listeners, mostly who have woken up to her voice for at least the last 38 years, and to not have her there in the mornings. I think it's going to be a huge change for people, and she's going to be missed. There's no replacing Lisa. It's going to be different. It's just kind of the way it is. You can't replace someone that you've worked with for 20 some years and have that chemistry and that connection with someone right away, and the success that we've had. It's going to be a challenge for myself and whoever else is part of the program going forward. Williams' final broadcast as morning co-host took place Friday, May the 31st. For someone to be 38 years at one radio station is remarkable in itself. Anybody who knows the radio industry knows that people don't stick around in radio stations for that long a period of time very often. It's always based on ratings and, personnel changes and layoffs and what have you. So I think 38 years is certainly remarkable, and certainly a station that's had a huge listening audience over the years, on both sides of the border. We've had stations like that and personalities in Montreal on the English side as well that, were at stations for a very long time. And, when they go, it's a really big deal. Like, retire. I remember George Balkan at CJD. There was a huge party that took place in Montreal, a retirement party with all kinds of celebrities showing up and what have you. And it was really, it was almost traumatic for a lot of listeners to lose people like that from the radio. They're just part of everyday life. You turn on the radio every morning and that person is there, and then suddenly they aren't. So anyways, we wish her well, and congratulations on a 38-year career. It's certainly something to be proud of.
Absolutely. So what's happening with our sun? Well, we've got an old friend returning. It changed its number because what happens with solar activity is that back in the day when we didn't really know that sunspots would rotate and come back, we would have a new sunspot and give it a new number, and we continued with that naming system. So AR3664, which is the sunspot that gave us the May 10th huge geomagnetic storm, and that sunspot was as big as the Carrington event sunspot, has returned, and now it's AR3697. It's a new number. It is smaller than it was, but it's still potent. Actually, as we're recording this, not that long ago, it released an X1.1 solar flare, which is very strong. It also has a friend, which is AR3691, that is also very capable of doing very strong solar flares. So in the week to come, I think we're going to have some interesting propagation conditions, possible flaring, but it will be interesting to see. Sunspot number 144, the solar flux 175, and that means this week we're in for anything can happen, from big solar flares and possible geomagnetic storms to simply good conditions and high solar activity. It depends on how these sunspots will actually react. And the only way that you can really witness all of this, it's not just to go to spaceweather.com and watch it on your screen. It's to turn on a radio and listen.
Hello, I'm Saul Brody from Philadelphia, PA, USA. You're tuned to the International Radio Report, 30 minutes of news about radio on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
I think it's very timely that sunspot is coming back, and it seems like at least some people are interested in what happened last time and maybe what might happen this time.
I think some people were maybe a little worried about what happened last time. So, Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau seeks comment on the impacts of the May 2024 geomagnetic storm on the U.S. communications sector. This is via Federal Communications Commission. The Federal Communications Commission's Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau seeks comment on any observed impacts to communications that resulted from the May 2024 severe geomagnetic storm. On Thursday, May 9, 2024, the National Weather Service Space Weather Prediction Center issued a severe G4 geomagnetic storm watch, forecasting a series of coronal mass ejections that merged with the Earth's electromagnetic fields between May 7th and 11th, 2024. On May 11, 2024, the storm reached extreme G5 conditions, the first time this severity has been observed since 2003. According to the Space Weather Prediction Center, CMEs are large expulsions of plasma and magnetic field from the sun's corona. Electromagnetic currents generated by CMEs when merged with the Earth's electromagnetic field may distort the propagation of radio frequency waves. On May 11, 2024, the FCC High Frequency Direction Finding Center, which supports the public safety community and federal partners by locating interference to radio spectrum below 30 MHz, observed significant disturbance in the propagation of HF radio signals. This disturbance resulted in the disruption of voice and data communications passed over HF frequencies. To better understand the impacts of the geomagnetic storm on the U.S. communications sector, the Bureau is requesting information from communication service providers and the public regarding disruptions in communications between May 7th and 11th, 2024, that it believes to be a result of the storm. The Bureau is encouraging commenters to provide any available evidence, particularly electromagnetic spectrum analyses, imagery, or chronological logs relating to the storm's impacts. Where possible, the Bureau asks the commenters include the description of the impacts, make and model of affected communications equipment, which could include transmitters, receivers, transceivers, switches, routers, amplifiers, etc. Make, model, and type of affected antenna and their composition, frequencies affected, type and composition of cable adjoining communications equipment and the antenna, if applicable, during the impact, and any residual effects observed in the hours following restoration. For further information, you can contact Justin Kane, Chief Operations and Emergency Management Division, Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau at 202-418-2924 or justin.kane@fcc.gov. I think that storm worried more people than we might have expected. It's been a long time since we had such a strong storm. I mean, we were at the Shortwave Fest, and we kept talking about it almost through the weekend because we know what impact it can have. I think there's two types of people that could be interesting here. Of course, there's communications companies that have all sorts of, transmitters, data transmitters, and so on in the commercial sector. But I think a lot of the information that could be very useful that these people need is us radio listeners, amateur radio operators that were at the forefront and might maybe even understand a lot more the impact of what happened and what could happen But I think this is the start of maybe we should be more serious for the future of what can happen with our sun.
Yeah, and certainly documenting what was taking place. Like you said, we were, casually talking about the impacts, and because we understand this stuff, I was thinking of listeners to our show who don't really who probably sometimes wonder, what are those guys talking about, and why are they telling us what's going on the sun? Well, this is basically justifying why we put that information out, because of what does go on the sun has such a major impact on communications on the planet. I like that they listed all the different types of equipment here and specifically mentioned transmitters, receivers, transceivers, which is ham radio equipment basically. Yep. Switches and antennas and routers and all of this type of thing. I guess they know that there are some people out there who know what this stuff is all about, and they're finally asking for our input. So, they haven't mentioned us by name, but just by talking about the type of equipment, we know, that some of this is directed at people yep. like our radio people. So we'll put a link up to this if you have documented anything that went on during that storm, and maybe the one upcoming if we get another one. Take some notes, make some recordings even. When you get these fade outs every once in a while, you may be listening to something and then wham, all of a sudden it disappears. Well, that's sort of what they're looking for. They want to know the impact, how long it lasts, when do the signals start to come back, that sort of thing. So, this is really interesting article to see this, that the FCC has decided, we better just take a closer look at all of this.
And don't be intimidated by what they're asking. It might sound very technical, but you know what? Just a simple report saying that at this particular time, I was listening to this signal and it all disappeared in, a minute is enough important information for them to understand, it has a big impact.
Yeah, and if you're just, casual listener, you've got a little loop antenna outside like some of us do, and it was affecting that, you could imagine on much more sophisticated communication systems and whatever, with much more powerful equipment and antennas and technical data, it's really important. So even our input at our level is just as important. If it's affecting us down at our level, we know what it could be doing at some of the higher levels with much more vital communications going on out there. So next we take you to Europe. And this comes from the European Broadcasting Union. The EBU, as it's called, the European Broadcasting Union report has been issued on radio in times of crisis. Recently, the EBU has published a comprehensive document on the role radio plays in times of crisis by highlighting the pivotal role of radio, not only its technical capabilities regarding terrestrial distribution, but also in its broader impact. The document examines the way in which radio can help people at all stages of a crisis. This new report, compiled by Mathieu Rawal, Senior Media Analyst for the EBU Media Intelligence Service, gives a comprehensive view of natural disasters and the evolution of armed conflicts. Then there is a list of cases that highlight the indispensable nature of terrestrial radio distribution, showing its extreme resilience compared to other communications networks, especially due to its great attributes in crisis communication. Thanks to robust terrestrial networks, radio receivers are also reliable. People on the run can use them anytime and anywhere, as they are portable and available in a car. The conclusion is therefore that radio needs to preserve its strengths also in terms of prominence while exploring innovations. As the EBU report shows, radio can help people at all stages of a crisis. It also explores the unique qualities of radio as a medium that makes it a cornerstone of crisis communication, emphasizing its accessibility, reliability, reach, and trust. And interestingly, the report also stresses the importance of using not only analog systems, but also the more comprehensive solutions offered by open digital radio, DAB+, and DRM radio, innovate by including emergency features. So this full report is available from the European Broadcasting Union webpage, but the EBU requires that you set up a free account on their webpage to be able to access the full report. There's no charge for doing that as a free account, and it does give you access to not just this particular report, but a lot of other interesting documents and news items that appear on their website. So we'll put up the link to this particular report, and you can open up your EBU account and take a look at what else is there as well.
It's interesting that they do actually want to see not just analog, and they want to see what the effects are on digital communication. So, they'll have more of a broad picture of what's happening.
I think they'll get some good feedback, and it's important to look at that. And again, it really stresses the importance of having our good old-fashioned radio as a very vital tool when it comes to crisis and armed conflicts and many other things that we've talked about on our show regularly, natural disasters and what have you.
So we have upcoming ham radio contests.
We start with the Wireless Institute of Australia, which is organizing the VK Shires contest, 0100 to 2359 Zulu, June the 8th. It is 160 through 10 meters. Please note that there is a 75-meter DX window that is permitted for Australian stations. The modes for this will be SSB and CW.
There's the Asia Pacific Sprint SSB, 1100 Zulu to 1300 Zulu, June 8th, organized by the Asia Pacific Sprint Committee. Objectives for stations outside the Asia Pacific region to work as many Asia Pacific stations as possible within the 2-hour time limit, and for stations inside the Asia Pacific region to work as many stations as possible anywhere in the world within the 2-hour limit. The bands are 15 and 20 meters, and it's SSB.
The Rede dos Emissores Português is organizing the Portugal Day contest, 1200 Zulu June 8th to 1200 Zulu June the 9th. 10 meters through 80 meters. It is a SSB, CW, or mixed SSB and CW modes.
The Argentina CW group is organizing the GACW WWSA CW DX contest, 1500 Zulu June 8th to 1500 Zulu June 9th. Bands are 80, 40, 20, 15, and 10 meters, and it's Morse code CW only.
And we have a big contest coming up by the American Radio Relay League. It is their June VHF contest, 1800 Zulu June 8th to 0259 Zulu June the 10th. The contest objective for amateurs in the U.S. and Canada and their possessions to work as many amateur stations in as many different 2-degree by 1-degree Maidenhead grid squares as possible, using authorized frequencies above 50 megahertz. Stations outside the U.S. and Canada and their possessions may only work stations in the U.S. and its possessions and Canada. It is all modes, so you can work FM mode, you can work sideband, you can work basically whatever mode you like, but it's all the ham frequencies above 50 megahertz.
With all the summer conditions, the high solar activity, and the auroral conditions possible, that could be an interesting one.
Yep, and it's a big one. A lot of people will be on the band, so check it out if you're interested in VHF contesting.
Can you believe it? We're out of time.
We are. We mentioned we would tell you how to reach us. Well, it is easy to do. You can email our show, a radio report at yahoo.com. If you missed the show, it is archived at ckut.ca. You can also get it live streaming there through the CKUT website. Our Facebook group, International Radio Report. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@IRR. We are approaching the 1,000 subscriber mark. We're only 10 away. So if you haven't joined in and subscribed to the YouTube channel, please consider doing that. And our X account at IRRCKUT. We invite you to follow us there. That will do it for this week. We thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you again next Sunday morning with the next edition of the International Radio Report on CKUT 90.3 FM in Montreal.
Have a great week, everyone.
Bye-bye.